Hey, good Tuesday morning, everybody. BAM weather meteorologist Brett Waltz here with a long-range forecast update. Guys, a key update for the middle to latter part of August and into the start of September. And we have our eyes on the tropical Atlantic for a potential uptick in activity as we work towards the back half of this month. A couple of areas that we're keeping an eye on right now in the short term, but really keeping an eye on things in the extended range as well as we're working through a favorable setup in terms of our tropical forcing for increased tropical threats down the road. So we will talk about that as we go throughout this video. We'll also have an updated weeks 3 and 4 forecast for you all here as well, which actually goes out through September 1st. Wanted to start out this morning with the observed rainfall totals over the past 24 hours. You can certainly see we zoom out. It's just been very hit or miss. Some rain in Omaha, some rain in the Indianapolis area, rain in the southeast part of the country, but it's been here and there and everywhere, not widespread. But where it has happened, we look in the Ohio Valley the last 24 hours, there have been some localized totals of 3-4 inches plus of rain. And we mentioned the flood watches across the southeast part of the country and the heavy rain there this week. You can see the heavy corridor of rain that happened down there in parts of Georgia and South Carolina as well. And so not widespread rain events for the most part this week, but where the rain is setting up, it can pack a punch, and it will continue to do so if we take a look at our forecast the next 7 days. Let me zoom in on this, give you a little bit of a better picture of what we're expecting for rainfall potential. Again, circled areas, I think that's where we can deal with some locally heavier rain totals than modeled. Data, just generally speaking, doesn't do a stellar job at picking up on these more slow-moving heavy storms, and we're seeing that this morning in the Ohio Valley. I think we could see a little bit of that with some strong storm threats out in the plains as well. But the more widespread rains will likely set up across parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, and into parts of Wisconsin. Taking a look real quick, we'll take a look at those severe weather risk as we work over the next few days. It's well to the north and to the west in the country. Up in the Dakotas, you can see a slight risk for severe weather today with some storms. Low in tornado risk, but hail and wind will be the primary threats. And then as we work into tomorrow, a marginal risk, and once again, a marginal risk as we work into your Thursday. Taking a look here at the rest of the forecast over the next 2 weeks, you can certainly see, as we've touched on, the heat picking back up across the United States, especially across the eastern ag belt. And the trend, and we'll touch more on this in a moment, the trend has been to linger this longer. We look at our week 2 forecast here, it's very hot overall, and pretty much all the data is on board with this idea. We're still keeping an eye on a couple of fronts in here that I think need to at least be monitored, especially the 17th to 19th one. My concern is that there's an increasing threat that the cold fronts will want to bleed more so into the western and central part of the country rather than the eastern part of the U.S. Given that, I think what ends up happening is we probably do see uptick in moisture and probably messy storm chances across the northern and eastern ag belt regions, drier risk more so across the western half of the country. Here's a look at the 10 to 15 day forecast from the EPS last night, and you can certainly see it's not seen any kind of a cold front, at least not yet. Well above normal temperatures across the Central Plains, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, and into the northeastern part of the United States, with the vast majority of the U.S. warmer than normal. And again, it did trend warmer last night as well. And so, okay, we've talked about the cold front. We've talked about why there's a cold front in the previous videos, so why is the data not seeing it yet? A couple of reasons for this. Number one, tropical forcing. MJO Phase 2 does favor the cold front across the central part of the country. However, the tendency has been to kind of stall this out and even get into a little bit more of a Phase 3 type of a deal, which is a more widespread warmer risk. That would limit how far south any kind of a cold front, how far south and east any kind of a cold front could actually end up coming. On top of that, and then I think this is an important piece to this, MJO phases 2, 3, and into 4 are the biggest phases in terms of tropical activity in the Atlantic. In fact, if you look at the percent of continental United States landfalling storms, hurricanes, and major hurricanes, the vast majority of landfalling major hurricanes happen between MJO phases 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is exactly where we are moving into mid-August. It will also favor a big uptick in development. 63% of all of the Atlantic cyclone energy from tropical cyclones happens in these phases. And so we're very likely to see an uptick in tropical activity as we go throughout this time frame. Between the 15th and the 20th, looking to see some kind of tropical threat develop in the tropical Atlantic, working towards the Caribbean and eventually somewhere close to the United States. Now, I want to be very clear here. There's no storm that's developed yet. We're not forecasting any kind of an intense storm at this point or even a specific track. But we need to keep an eye on this particular time frame for some kind of a threat. If I had to make a guess at this distance, I would probably go with something that tracks more towards the Gulf based off of the upper level setup. But track B, out to sea, up the East Coast is not out of the question either. The very least, bottom line here, we need to watch this. It needs to be watched closely. There's no specifics at this distance. But what we do know is with tropical development, it does tend to enhance eastern United States warmth. And if we take a look at the forecast into the weeks 3 and 4 time frame, we can actually see above normal tropical activity signals on the EPS weekly in the Gulf and out towards the East Coast. And so there's support from multiple pieces of data for an uptick in tropical activity. And I think that will certainly help enhance the ridge of high pressure to the north across the Great Lakes, the Midwest, and into the Ohio Valley. On top of that, our global wind is negative, which is a warmer signal with the forecast as a whole. And so we have a stalling MJO in a slightly warmer phase. We have a weak global wind, which is a warmer signal. And now we're getting tropical activity on top of this that tends to develop more of an eastern United States warmth idea. I think with all of that, the tendency will be for colder air with our fronts to drop more across the western half of the country versus the eastern half of the country. If we take a look at years that best matches this setup, you have years like 2021, 2014, 2011, and 2010. That's exactly what they did. They dropped in colder air. There were fronts in these years, but it dropped more across the Northwest Plains and into the Pacific Northwest, kept the eastern 2/3 of the country or so warmer than normal. Now, these years varied more on precipitation because of tropical activity. Depending on where any kind of a tropical system goes, it will have a major impact on the rainfall pattern. This is kind of an idea of what it would look like without the tropical influence. We would have a lot of moisture and northwest flow opportunities kind of across the northern tier of the United States. But if we get activity down here, north and west of where hurricanes and tropical storms go, typically it trends drier. And so what we're going to do on our weeks 3 and 4 forecast is try to blend the ideas the best that we can. Here's a look. We do have some data support. This is the CFS. It's maybe a little bit too far west, but it has trended quite a bit warmer, and it shows at least a close idea to the analogs in this particular time frame. And in terms of moisture, I actually like its idea as well. You can see some of the tendencies for some northwest flow, but you can also see some activity in the Gulf. I think that's probably not too far off reality when all is said and done. And so what we did here, we've trended our forecast back a little bit warmer with the idea that our fronts are going to be more likely to drop into the western portion of the country. There is still a cooler risk for the Great Lakes and the Midwest. If this can move further to the east, if our tropical system can stay way out to sea, it will allow these fronts to move further east into the Ag Belt, into the Midwest and the Great Lakes. And so a lot is going to depend on what happens with the potential tropical setup down the road. I'll talk more about this risk here in a moment in terms of temperatures. In terms of precipitation, again, tried to blend the ideas the best we could, wetter than normal across the north central part of the country, left some room in the Ohio Valley. Would not be shocked if, week 3's drier in here, if we get a storm that moves through here, and then we get more active again into the week 4 time frame. It's probably not cut and dry, probably a little bit variable in terms of the precipitation threats, but drier across the southwestern part of the country. Before we go, here's that risk. Again, decent drop in our SOI, our Southern Oscillation Index. That's the difference in pressure between Darwin and Tahiti. When you get these big drops, it typically favors a stronger cold front. The North Pacific pattern also favored a cold front around this time frame, which was kind of the basis of our forecast from Friday, which brought in some cooler air for a time. Again, because of other things that are going on as we discuss, favoring this cooler shot to drop more into the western part of the country. However, again, if things fail with the tropical idea, if the global wind isn't as negative as expected, if the MJO dies off, the risk would be that this cold front and the cooler air with it would come further to the east. Here's the correlation of what we would typically see with an SOI drop and a negative SOI into August. You can see it favors cooler shots of air across the north central part of the country. It might favor some continued warmth in the coastal regions. And so that's the main risk to watch. It would just be, if we go back to our weeks 3 and 4 forecast here, it would just be that this below normal would want to come further to the east, specifically in the week 3 time frame. Maybe we warm back up after that based off some signals in the week 4 regardless. So that's a breakdown of the risks, the pattern. Tropical activity, I think definitely for the first time this year really has our attention and is something that we need to watch as a major pattern influence moving forward. Guys, that's all I have for today's forecast. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day.